1.
Hello and welcome to our virtual travel presentation. I am so glad that you've come to chosen to spend some time with us today, sharing this adventure with us and learning about Hurtigruten.
You said it perfectly.
Thank you. I've practiced. In this time of closed borders, it's so really nice to be able to stay in touch with each other. And to travel vicariously through the power of technology. My name is Sandra Romanauskas, for those of you who don't know me, and I am a travel agent working from my home in Manichik. My agency is Experience More Travel. I am partnered with the amazing support team of the travel agent next door, who ensures that I have the newest and greatest tools to serve my clientele. Today, I am honored to welcome Kristin from Hurtigruten. She will be telling us about all about expedition cruising, the Hurtigruten way. So Hurtigruten is no new kid on the block. They've been around for a little while, I hear, well over 100 years. So Kristin, why don't you start with telling us a little bit about the company's history?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sandra. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. So it's funny, we joke a little bit about the pronunciation of our name, and that is probably one of the hardest things to learn about us. And the Norwegians pronounce it so eloquently. We are a Norwegian company, so it is Hurtigruten, or Hurtigruten, as we say here in North America. And our name means fast route or express route. And this actually, this name was coined all the way back in 1893 when we started as a company. So yes, we're over 127 years old. And we started with our first captain, Richard Witt, and our first steamship, the DS Vesteralen, doing a route along the Norwegian coast to help service the local coastal communities in Norway with things like mail. Shipping supplies, lumber, food, that sort of thing, and especially those smaller communities that live, above the Arctic Circle. They were experiencing very infrequent delivery of these supplies in the mail because, unfortunately, above the Arctic Circle, especially back then, there was very limited lighthouses. The waters can be quite treacherous, especially in the wintertime. So there was a desperate need to really improve the shipping routes along the Norwegian coast. And our captain, Richard Witt, was the first to step up the plate to create this more frequent and reliable shipping system all the way along the Norwegian coast. So we really are an artery in this part of the country. And what's kind of neat is we actually still operate this route today. When it first started back in 1893, we were operating between Trondheim and Hammerfest. And then we expanded it to Bergen and Kirkenes, and that is the route we still operate today. And the route between Bergen and Kirkenes only takes 7 days, surprisingly. And Norway does have one of the longest coastlines. So it is second in length compared to Canada. That is the first with the longest coastline. A little info there for you. So that's where the name came from, was fast route, express route, because it only took that 7-day time frame to get all the way up the Norwegian coast with our service. So as I mentioned, this does still exist today. We have still in service quite a number of ships. We have 7 along the coast of Norway right now, delivering supplies and things like that, including sometimes the mail. And we also now invite guests to come on and enjoy the experience as well, something that Sandra and I got to do together back last year. It seems so long ago now.
It does.
So we really are polar pioneers, pushing the boundaries, especially in year-round cruising in these polar regions. I mean, yes, we do sail in Norway all year round. And we also started exploring into the Arctic just 3 years after we became companies. 1896, we started sailing over to Svalbard, which is Arctic Norway. And then, of course, since then, we have expanded our roster of destinations that we go to, but our specialty lies with polar regions. It's really such a unique area to be cruising and experiencing just something unlike cruising, in the large ship form has to offer today. So with where we stand currently, we are the largest expedition cruise company in the world, both in the number of ships we have to offer and the market share and the number of itineraries. So that's kind of, bringing us up from 1893 to where we stand today in 2020.
Well, that's really interesting. So it seems like you probably sail in some of the most pristine waters in the world, being that you go to the polar regions. So what does Hurtigruten do to, regarding sustainability and being a little bit greener, especially regarding the areas that you sail to?
And that's so right, Sandra. I mean, these really are especially not only pristine and beautiful, but some of the most environmentally sensitive regions of the world that we are sailing in. So we make sure that sustainability is at the heart of our operations. It's very important to us as a company to make sure that we're doing all that we can to really be leading the industry, especially in the cruising side of things, with our sustainable initiatives. So part of that starts with how we're powering our ships. We're very lucky that we were able to launch the world's first hybrid electric powered ships, the MS Roald Amundsen and the MS Fridtjof Nansen. And another little Canadian tie to this is the battery packs actually that are on board these two ships were built in partnership with a Canadian company located in BC. So I'm quite proud of that fact. So the neat thing with these battery packs on board is we can keep the batteries continuously running and charging, and they help offset our emissions by 20%. So maybe rather than increasing fuel when we want to, increase our RPMs, we can actually use the batteries to offset that difference. And when we are in some pristine parts of the world, like maybe we're doing some scenic cruising in the Geringer Fjord in Norway, or maybe we're down in Antarctica, a closer to shore, and there might be a pod of whales swimming nearby. We actually have the ability to shut off all of our engines and run strictly on battery power for about a length of up to about 45 minutes at one time. But this can really enhance your experience of just kind of silent cruising to really just enjoy, Mother Nature as she's been presented to us. So it really does enhance the experience, enjoying, these destinations on these hybrid electric powered ships. And then, of course, not all of our ships are brand new. So with our existing fleet, because they don't yet have hybrid electric, we're actually converting them over to a biofuel, which, if you can believe it, is made out of organic waste and dead fish. So we have found a way to use these sort of wasteful resources from the fishing and forestry industry to help power our ships. And what's even more incredible about this type of fuel is it is offsetting our emissions by up to 85%, which is just amazing. Unheard of and amazing in this industry, especially because unfortunately a lot of the shipping companies and some of the larger lines are still using those heavy fuel oils, which are so detrimental to the oceans, the coastal communities, the marine life. And we actually decided as a company about 10 years ago to completely ban heavy fuel oils. Even though it wasn't required of us in the industry, we decided that this was just not the way we were comfortable operating. So we have been, working towards these much more sustainable ways of operating our ships. We do have a goal as a company to be the world's first cruise line that operates 100% emission-free. The technology doesn't exist quite yet, but these are the types of things that Hurtigruten invests in because, we do realize we have a very big privilege of being able to sail in these parts of the world. So we want to make sure that we are doing everything we possibly can to completely reduce our carbon footprint. And one of the things we're very proud of as well as we were the first major travel company and cruise line to completely ban single-use plastics across our entire fleet. And this we actually did over a very short period of time, just over about 2.5 years ago. In 4 months' time, we managed to do that across our entire fleet of 16 ships, which we were very proud of that. And again, just one of the many initiatives that we do on board in order to offer a more sustainable experience for our guests and for within the environments that we get to sail. And we do all of this, I like to say, on board our beautiful ships. We call them our base camp at sea. You know, when you're about to go trekking up to Kilimanjaro and you have your different base camps that you can meet up along the way, we have the same type of adventure, just on the water and in some different destinations. So our base camps at sea are very comfortable premium settings where you can go out and enjoy a day of penguin viewing or maybe hiking near, some amazing cliffs and fjord systems in Norway, or maybe it's snowshoeing down in Antarctica or something like that. But then the idea is to come back, to your just cozy, comfy retreat, kind of your home away from home. We're premium, but we're not luxury in the sense where we're not doing champagne and strawberries in the Zodiac. That's not the type of experience we offer, but we're casual in the sense that if you just want to go to dinner in a cozy sweater and jeans, that's completely acceptable. We're going to give you a premium experience on board, a premium cuisine experience as well, but it's just meant to be that kind of retreat to just relax and enjoy. And again, we do get some of the most amazing scenic cruising opportunities right from our ship as well. So a premium experience, without any type of sort of pretension or pretentious attitude, that sort of thing on board. No dress code, no suits, no dresses. We don't want any of that on board. It's just, comfy, cozy, casual, and you're there to learn,
amazing,
and be educated and enjoy just our beautiful surroundings.
So it looks like you're not giving up comfort by doing an expedition cruise, and your base camp certainly not the same as a base camp for going to Kilimanjaro or anything like that.
Definitely not. Yeah, we might be a little bit more premium in that experience. And I think too, even with like sort of traditional expedition cruising, even 5 years ago, I think people have this image of, being on the big Russian freighter, with bunk beds and, very limited amenities on board. That's sort of, not too long ago what expedition cruising was like. And of course, now that it is becoming a much more popular way to travel, companies like ourselves and many others are moving into this, premium experience, both on ship and shore as well.
Excellent. Well, what exactly is expedition cruising? Maybe you can tell our viewers a bit about what makes expedition cruising stand out, especially the Hurtigruten way.
Definitely. Because I think a lot of people come into maybe their first attempts at researching expedition cruising, really not having any major understanding of what it's all about. Because I know in the larger ship world, there's this constant competition of tallest water slide at sea, coolest amenities with go-karts and things like that. And believe me, those experiences are all great. And there are definitely, the perfect guests for that type of experience. But to understand expedition cruising, it is more for us educationally focused. So it's not so much about the bells and whistles of the ships, because we do need to keep our ship experience very small, because some of the destinations dictate that in order for us to be there, we need to keep our passenger capacity under a certain number. Our ships need to be under a certain size in order for us to be able to sail there. So we pick and choose very carefully what amenities we do have on board to make sure that it's enough to enhance your comfort and your enjoyment of the experience, but it's not taking away from the important part of visiting a place like, being up in Arctic Norway and Svalbard, because really the destination is what it's all about. So a lot of the itineraries are built around exploration of the past, or exploration attempts of the past. The Northwest Passage is a great example of that. One of our newer ships, the MS Roald Amundsen, obviously aptly named after one of the famed Norwegian explorers, Roald Amundsen. And why he had such an incredible history is he was the first to find the transit all the way through the Northwest Passage after so many previous failed attempts. And after his attempts, going down to Antarctica was the first to make it down to the South Pole. He got in there just before Scott did. So these are the types of stories and experiences that we weave into the expedition experience. And sometimes we're lucky that we actually get to do landing sites where they might have overwintered in the past during their exploration routes. And of course, it's about, getting off the beaten path, getting to these remote destinations that are, very, uninhabited sometimes. Like this picture kind of is perfect, just to showcase that we're not always going somewhere where people live. It can be literally just this barren tundra or, snow-clipped mountains with maybe abandoned research stations, that sort of thing. So we're kind of there to just enjoy the beauty of nature and the landscapes as they naturally are. And as I mentioned, it is educationally focused. So you won't find things like Broadway shows on board, or comedy shows or anything like that, or karaoke. There's no casino to spend your money on board. It's more about doing our lecture series, learn more about the destinations, and going to our science center and looking through the microscopes at maybe phytoplankton samples or something that we pulled out of the water. We really want our ship to be an extension of the destination and not take away from the destination. And most importantly, when going into expedition cruising, you want to make sure that you're traveling with an open mind, knowing that the schedule is going to be flexible based on the conditions of the weather, the sea, the ice, because that can alter our itinerary or our planned itinerary on a day-to-day basis, even sometimes on an hourly basis. But it's part of the surprise and opportunity of expedition cruising is, you just kind of have to throw caution to the wind, let the captain and the expedition team, put all your faith and trust in them that they are going to deliver an incredible and most importantly, safe experience for you in these wonderful destinations that we get to visit. So just a little bit about those very special people on board. Our expedition team acts as your hosts and your guides on board. So like on the larger ships, we're used to the cruise directors, kind of guiding everything and keeping people entertained. Our expedition team is a version of that, just more with an educational focus to it. So we have over 350 expedition team members, and they come from all over the world. And I'm very happy to say that actually the chief naturalist for Hurtigruten is a Canadian. Nice little ties into Canada throughout our product. And they're educated professionals in things like marine biology, geology, ornithology, or bird specialists. And they're there to, chat with you about destination-specific themes, do on deck guiding as well. Because sometimes there's, maybe in a place like Iceland, for example, we might be doing some scenic cruising near some bird cliffs. So our ornithologists will be up on the top deck, helping our guests to recognize and identify the different bird life that we're seeing. And we also have a photographer on board as well to help you capture these moments and give you a couple introductory lessons on using your camera equipment and just the basics of photography. And of course, because we do spend a lot of our time in the polar regions, they have to go through very rigorous polar survival training. And it's something that they have to renew their skills and knowledge with us every year. And before they're able to jump on a ship for the Antarctica season, for example. Because of course, safety is the utmost of importance with any expedition that we do. So what comes included in your expedition? Because it does look a little bit different than what we might be used to when we're looking at a big ship experience, because there's gear involved when it comes to taking an expedition. So there's no, bikinis or things that you need to worry about too much on the expedition experience. So first and foremost, our culinary experience. And what makes expedition cruising unique is we like to say expedition takes priority over mealtimes, because of course we are so heavily reliant on nature and the weather conditions and the ice conditions that when we have the pristine moment to be able to go out and do our operations, we need to make sure that we're like ready and good to go. So it might mean that breakfast might be a bit delayed that day, or it might mean we're going to do it a little bit earlier because we see that the weather is going to get better a little bit later that morning. So the meal times are going to shift around the expedition experience. So day to day, they might vary by an hour or two. Don't worry, we're not going to have you miss any meals. We know how important that still is. But we make sure that the experience takes the priority when it comes to the timing of our meals. So that if we are out doing an evening landing, we're still going to accommodate, dinner after the landing or before the landing experience.
Well, we even had that in our trip to Norway, whereas if you get back from an expedition at 9:30 at night, the dining room is open and waiting for you, and in you go.
Exactly. And that's a perfect example of just, we want to make sure people are there to experience the destination, right? That's the most important thing. So we want to make sure that we're timing ourselves to give the biggest benefit to being out and exploring. So don't worry, as I mentioned, all your meals are included in the expedition experience. We do have early riser treats, afternoon treats as well. So maybe you do come back from a landing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and we'll do, maybe soup and a baguette up in the lounge. Or if we get those beautiful sunny scenic cruising days, our hotel manager will decide to just throw an open deck barbecue, which can be such a great experience. I remember doing that in Antarctica. We were sailing through this channel called the Gullet, and it was just sunny, iceberg after iceberg, just incredible. And, standing up there having a hot dog with a nice cold beer, enjoying this experience. It was like the penultimate thing to do on a beautiful scenic cruising afternoon. We always have coffee, tea, water included and available 24/7. And at the meal times for lunch and dinner, we do have house wine, beer, pop, and mineral water as an inclusion as well. And we don't expect any gratuities. It's not the Norwegian way of life tip. So we have passed that concept on to our ships. I feel like in North America, we're so used to tipping. It's like in our blood just to constantly be, tipping. That's just what we do. So just for our guests to be aware, it's not mandatory. It's not required. You can choose to and have it added to your onboard account. But it's just one of the things that we pass on culturally to the ship experience. And then, as you heard me mention, the onboard engagement, a lot of that has to do from an educational standpoint. So our expedition team will do in-depth lectures throughout the entire trip, and they intersperse these in and around the landings and scenic cruising. So you're not going to miss out on them because you're out on shore. So they will base their topics around their own knowledge and experience, but around, of course, the destination we're in. And we always talk about climate change, sustainability, what we're doing, how, we can visually see the effects of it in the destinations that we're in. Because when you look at a place like even up in the Arctic, for example, some of our expedition team have been doing those routes for, years upon years upon years, and see for themselves the effects of, how quickly glaciers might be receding year after year that we're visiting these places. We also have with our guests citizen science programs that they're able to work with us on, and it's literally our own way of contributing to research. So we are partnered with different associations around the world and help and aid in the collection of data. And why this is such a neat thing is because not every research association has enough funding to be able to charter their own ship, to go spend an entire Antarctic summer studying whales. I mean, unfortunately, there's just not always enough money to be out there doing all that stuff yourself. So we work with these types of research associations where, because we are in the Antarctic area the entire summer season, we can actually contribute our data to their research. So one of my favorites, we partner with a company called Happy Whale, and they are, of course, a very worldly giant whale database, and they follow where and how whale migration is happening, the types of whales. They just have this massive database all over the world. So what we can actually do as guests is any of the pictures that we take on our voyage of a whale tail, because that's their version of us with fingerprints. We submit those photos to Happy Whale, and they can actually tell us just from the photo if that whale exists in their database. And if it does, they can tell us obviously the type of whale, approximately how old it is, the gender, does it migrate typically with other family member whales, what is its migratory pattern. And what's even more neat is if that whale doesn't exist in the database, you get to be the one who has now added it to their database, and you get to name the whale as well. So then the whale will forever live on in the Happy Whale database with the name that you gave it. So you've got like your permanent stamp on, aiding research in the study of whales around the world. So that's kind of some of the neat things that we get to participate in on board. And they come in multiple different types of programs. We do cloud observation with NASA. We collect seabird surveys, because believe me, on any of our expeditions, you're just bound to see a ton of different bird life. We collect phytoplankton samples and can analyze those on board. So a lot of really interesting and neat things that we get to participate in. And as you heard me mention, we do have a photographer on board each one of our expedition ships, and they will capture the entire voyage as well with their own photos and put it together in a nice collection to show at the end of the voyage. And there's also an opportunity, if you choose, you can buy their photos on board on a little USB stick as a memory. I personally love that because I'm such a lazy photographer. I want to be out seeing and doing and not being stuck behind a camera. So I always took advantage of the professional photos from my trip. And we do have free Wi-Fi on board for guests as well. I'm just keeping in mind, of course, we do sail in remote regions, so we don't always have connectivity. And sometimes I think that's the best thing going, because it's, these destinations are worth disconnecting. It is absolutely incredible just to get away and appreciate where we are. So one of the other activities that we get to participate in with our guests is the science boat. So it's something that they can sign up for at the beginning of the trip. And then those who were interested, we break you down into smaller groups and schedule you throughout the voyage. This is included as part of the experience. And we take you out into little smaller groups. And this is where, we're collecting phytoplankton samples, for example. We can test the water and get water samples and see what type of microplastics might exist in the water and analyze them when we're back on board the ship, and checking water temperatures and things like that. So it's just sort of another way to be out and learning and educating yourself about where we are, and just really kind of gives a nice rounded experience to expedition cruising. And then, of course, there is the gear you're going to need for an expedition. So a lot of it we do include, especially starting with the Helly Hansen expedition jacket. So this is something that everybody will get once you're on board. It's also your souvenir to take home with you at the end of the experience. Nice wind, water resistant layer, easy to just throw on top of your existing layers, because that's what we recommend for expedition cruising from a packing standpoint, is layering yourself. Because yes, although we might think, oh my gosh, we're in polar regions, it's going to be -40 all the time. Keep in mind, we're sailing in these parts of the world during their summer, so we're not getting those crazy -40 temperatures. But what you'll find is, yes, you want to protect yourself from the cold, but as you'll find, as you might be active and doing, maybe a hike, or maybe you are out snowshoeing, you can actually get pretty, warm up as you are being active. And so we always say, important to take layers off, throw layers on, keep them light, keep them, kind of that sweat wicking type of fabric to make yourselves constantly comfortable with the changing environments. We also include the Hurtigruten muck boots, and especially in places like Antarctica, for example, these are a requirement. So this is one less major thing you need to be packing when you enjoy a trip with us. They're like rubber treaded, thick, just amazing to help you get through the snow, ice, mud conditions that we experience, and of course, keep your feet dry and warm as well. And so both the jacket and the boots, these are fitted for you once you're on board the ship. And then we also give on loan our trekking poles as well, because of course, sometimes you might just need a little bit of, easier footing. And the poles come in major handy, especially for some of the hikes if we're on icy climate, that sort of thing. And everybody will also get the reusable Hurtigruten water bottle. So we do have refill stations around the ship that you can use. And again, your souvenir to take home with us take home with you at the end of the experience. And then these boats that you see at the top here, these are our version of tender boats. So quite different from what we're used to seeing, from the larger ship world. So these we use to get our guests to and from, obviously, the shore. We also use them to go out and enjoy scenic cruising opportunities, which I'll show you a couple examples of that in a couple slides. So these are just kind of a nice open air way to still stay connected to the destination, but be at water level, which can really enhance your experience, especially if we encounter maybe some whales while we're out there as well. So you hear me use the term landings, ice cruising, scenic cruising, and a landing literally sounds as formal as the name suggests that it is. It is when we bring our explorer boats, our Zodiacs, as you might know them as, up to land, and we get off and explore the land as it is. So different from going to a port where there might be a city and a dock, and shops and all that sort of stuff. We are landing to experience the land. Very formal and official, I know. And then for scenic and ice cruising, again, that's when we get to go out and be at water level in the boats, to be up close and personal, with some icebergs, for example. So these are the types of landings that we might experience on an expedition. So in the bottom left-hand corner here, you can see what a dry landing might look like. So sometimes in this case, we were visiting a research station that day. So we get to use obviously their dock and their kind of area that's nicely set up that we can disembark our guests from. At the top here, this is a version of a wet landing or a beach landing. So you can see why those boots come in handy, because sometimes you do have to jump down into 1 or 2 feet of polar water to get to and from land. And then the bottom right corner is a polar landing, again, why the boots are so important. And especially in the beginning seasons for Antarctica and up in the Arctic, when there's lots of snow and ice, our expedition team might have to actually shovel out a set of stairs in the snow and ice in order to safely allow our guests to disembark the Zodiac. So really different types of experiences. And you can actually have all 3 of these in one Hurtigruten voyage. It's not that you're going to always have one or the other. Quite often you get a mix of these types of landings. And then I think one of my favorite parts, because I think we're so used to ingraining in our brain that cruising is meant to be stopping at a port and getting off and exploring on land. But this is really the other half, or I should say the other third, because even just being on the ship and sailing through some of the places that we get to, that's a part of the experience as well. But being out in the Zodiacs and doing some scenic cruising, we call it ice cruising, of course, when we're in areas covered in ice. And it's just so neat to be that up close and personal with an iceberg. And you can literally feel and see the ice just, flowing beside you as you go through it. And again, we do sometimes get opportunities where the marine life come up close and personal with us, with our boat. So that's our opportunity. We just shut engines off, let them, do their thing. And it can just turn out to be such an incredible experience. Again, can't guarantee the whales, but it is something that you can hopefully look forward to in any of your trips with us. And then, of course, there's not always ice where we go. Sometimes it is just a matter of some beautiful scenery, landscapes, maybe some cliffs. This was actually taken in Smoking Hills in the Northwest Passage. No need to tell you why the name is what it is. But, or in places like Iceland, for example, we might take you out to do some scenic cruising along a bird cliff where, there might be tons of puffins that are just sort of sitting along the coast or of the cliff, and we can scenic cruise by them and just kind of have them all around you. It really does add, you know, to the expedition experience.
I love the way so many of I love the way so many of your pictures have, like, the penguins are, oh, hello, everywhere. And most of your Antarctic pictures, there's a penguin sitting there, or a bird sitting there, or a whale.
I mean, they're just there. I mean, you know, it's not something planned. It's nothing that we have any control over whatsoever. And that's the beauty of expedition, is these types of surprise moments and opportunity.
Amazing.
Like, keeping in mind, of course, we have to follow rules in terms of the distance we are, you know, from penguins, for example. Like, we have to be 15 feet away, 5 meters. So sometimes, though, the penguins don't know the rules, so the penguins do break the 5, you know, meter distance. But it's up to us to make sure we're following the rules, to make sure for safety of them, safety for us. And again, you just kind of let it all happen. The wildlife is in control, and we're simply there as just sort of bystanders to view and enjoy. But you've heard me mention a few, you know, names of places and things that we go. So where is all the places that we do get to experience? So of course, Norway, very near and dear to us. We are a Norwegian company, and we have been there the longest, for 127 years. So I always say, if you're thinking of going to Norway, why not go with the Norwegians, who have literally carved out the route along the Norwegian coast. And we get to go to a lot of the places that the larger ships can't get into, because we are a small ship experience. I think one of my favorite places is the Troll Fjord, where it literally feels like you could reach your arms out on the top deck of the ship and touch the sides of the cliffs. I mean, that's how close we are in that fjord system. And then to show off, sometimes the captain will spin the ship and do a little 360 in the middle of the fjord, just to really kind of cheekily, you know, make the point that we're small ship and we get to be here because we're small ship. Antarctica, of course, that 7th continent, people really want to tick that off of their bucket list. For me, that was my thing, to tick off that 7th continent. And I was lucky to do that earlier this year with Hurtigruten. When it comes to the Arctic, we visit Svalbard, which is Arctic Norway, as you've heard me mention. We go to Greenland and Iceland. And people think, like, oh, Iceland's not really part of the Arctic. But there is actually an island just north of Iceland that is still a part of Iceland, called Grimsey. And we attempt to do a landing here, and this is actually where the Arctic Circle line crosses right through this island of Iceland. So we work it into our Arctic destination itineraries. And then, of course, near and dear and close to us, Arctic Canada. I mean, we have got such an incredible coastline north of us that many of us have never seen. And we get the opportunity to visit, you know, these barren places in the world that are really just in our own backyard. And new for us is going along the coast of Alaska. And from a cruising perspective, we're used to seeing cruises in Alaska. I mean, that's such a common thing. But experiencing it in a small ship world, getting away from the larger ports where the big ships are, I like to say it really brings back the wild into the wild frontier of going to Alaska. And we'll talk more about that in our Closer to Home series. And then we've also got on the European side of things, we do the British and Scottish Isles. We've introduced itineraries doing southern Scandinavia. And again, this is not visiting a lot of the bigger cities. This is going to sometimes uninhabited islands where there is a bird colony that is living there, or an abandoned castle ruins that we go to explore. It really is, so you can still go and do, you know, a larger cruise experience in Scandinavia, and then hop on a Hurtigruten expedition in the same part of the world, and you will have a night and day completely different experience of these two different types of cruising, but in the same part of the world. And then we do have our Americas sailing, which sums up a very broad part of the world, North, Central, and South America. And it's because we use these itineraries as repositioning opportunities, because of course we spend a lot of time up here and we spend a lot of time down here between the poles. So we do East and West Coast Canada and US sailings. We go into parts of the Caribbean and Central America, and then down the west coast of South America before we start our Antarctic expeditions. So that is just sort of Hurtigruten in a very big nutshell.
Oh, that is so interesting. Thank you so much, Kristin. I've listened to your presentation several times, and I always there's always something new and something I learn about it, and I just always sit there in awe, and I just want to go. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this.
We are all dying to go.
Oh, it's just, yes. Well, I'm really looking forward, as Kristin alluded to, this is the first in a series of travel presentations that we would like to do. So our next one will, when we're finally allowed to go to some of these places again, it might be nice to go to a place a little bit closer to home. Antarctica will be a wonderful place to visit, but it's pretty far. It's on, from the very bottom of the world. So we're going to look at where we can go a little bit closer to home, and I'm really looking forward to that. If anybody has any questions on anything Hurtigruten related, or any of the information you heard in Kristin's wonderful presentation, feel free to contact me by phone, by email, through my website, text me, call me, whatever. I'm always happy to talk travel and tell people more about where they can, how they can explore this wonderful world of ours.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you so much, Sandra. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we've had the chance to inspire, some of our hopeful future guests, and we will catch you soon on our Closer to Home series.
Excellent.